morning.
It is great to see you, Dr. Buckley, and it is great to see Baltimore this morning. Welcome to the Healing City Summit. So I'm Zeke, City Councilman, represent District 1, also dad of Maya and Elias, husband of the great Rena, and just someone who is thrilled to be in community with so many of my fellow Baltimoreans.
And I am Dr. Melissa Buckley. I'm a faculty member at Coppin State University. I teach in the social work program alongside some really amazing social work faculty members, and we have some phenomenal students at Coppin as well. I'm really proud to be a resident in the best district in Baltimore City. I'm in District 1, which is Zeke's district. And so, yeah, I'm here representing Patterson Park, Cop 8, all of the things. I'm here for it. Just really, really happy to be here again with each of you.
Absolutely. So look, let's get it started. We're going to talk a little bit about how we got here, about the summit itself, and then we're going to bring on our first panel. Baltimore, we are a city that has been redlined and brutalized by racial injustice. We've been beaten down by a failed war on drugs. For the last 6 years, we've lost over 300 of our sisters, brothers, and siblings to violence, and multiple times more than that to overdose deaths. And more recently, we've lost so many to COVID-19. But Baltimore, we are also more than our trauma. We're a city of artists, educators, physicians, beauticians, and healers from all walks of life. In fact, we are the medicine. We are the key to our own healing. And I'm proud to say that we're the first city in America to comprehensively legislate trauma-informed care. Think about that for a second. We, despite our narrative, we are leading the nation in this work. First city to do this. And let me be clear, our young people are leading this work. Briefly, how we got here is that a couple of years back, there was a school shooting at Frederick Douglass High School in West Baltimore, and we held a hearing in the Education and Youth Committee focused on the violence that was impacting our young people. We heard from the school system, we heard from many adults. There was a lot of conversation around, should we have armed school police to prevent future shootings? Should we have more metal detectors? But the most powerful testimony by far was from young people, students who had been there at the time, who said very clearly, the adults in this conversation are missing the point. We don't need more policing. We need you, our city council, to prevent the violence and trauma that we experience every single day in this city. And they didn't just speak, Melissa, about that one incident. They spoke about the day-to-day experience of being Black in a racist system that has redlined, that has left disproportionate violence within our communities of color. They spoke about every adverse childhood experience in the book. They spoke about experiences with homelessness, substance use disorder, violence, both in community and of course the desecration of that one safe space, which was their school, that shooting that took place. And they pointed at us and said, look, you all as our city's leaders and as legislators, as the people who get to make the laws around here, you need to deal with this. You need to specifically legislate, come up with a law to prevent trauma from happening in Baltimore. And for me as a former teacher and as someone who spent most of my career working with young people, that was really, really powerful. Because when young people say something, you better listen. And what they said clearly and emphatically was that we needed a law to deal with this. And so we spent about a year listening and learning with the young people in libraries, in rec centers, in classrooms, in barbershops across our city. What we heard time and time again was not only that we need legislation to deal with this issue, but we need a movement of people, a healing city movement. Folks like Dr. Buckley and the many, many, many others who've united today and over the past 2 years to address trauma directly. We were really proud 1 year ago, I think 1 year ago today, actually, we held our first Healing City Summit. We had a youth day at Morgan State, 350 young people. Then we had a community day at the great Coppin State, where we had barbers, beauticians, nonprofits, healers of all walks of life, big resource fair, a DJ, Melissa students dancing it up. And then we all marched back to Frederick Douglass High School, the birthplace of this legislation, where then Mayor Jack Young signed our bill, thus making Baltimore the first city in America to comprehensively legislate trauma-informed care. And we knew then, and what we know now, is that without the continued movement of people pushing to make this happen and bringing out the best in Baltimore, which is us, all of us collectively, that legislation wasn't going to do anything. And so that's really what brings us here today. And this summit is a chance to learn from each other, from our experiences, from our creativity, to talk about mental health in a way that's honest, and to really join this movement of Healing City, Baltimore. And I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about how we can do that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for giving us that background. Every time that we get the opportunity to talk about Healing City and how we got to where we are right now, what I hope that people understand is that, as Zeke said, it is a movement of many people from throughout this city. Doesn't matter what age you are, what neighborhood or community you live in, what you do for a living, how many kids, it doesn't matter. Like, you are a part of this city, you are a part of the fabric, and therefore you're a part of the movement. And so to join the movement, we would invite you to go to our website, healingcitybaltimore.com/join. And that is where you will find the information that you can fill out, and then you will officially be a part of the movement. We're going to pull you into all of these meetings that we have. We're definitely going to be waiting to hear all of your really creative and innovative ideas. And most importantly, we're just looking for ways to connect. Before we went live, one of our panelists, Annette Grier, she said something, and I jotted it down real quick because it struck me hard. She says, if we can't connect, we can't survive. So folks, we want you to go to our website and click on that link that says get involved and become a part of this Healing City movement.
Excellent. Thanks again, Melissa. And thank you again to everybody joining us today. So with that, it is my great, great honor and distinction to introduce our first panel, which is an amazing group of Baltimoreans, really spanning generations. Some people that I'm privileged enough to call my friends, but also some of my personal heroes. It's really my great pleasure to introduce our moderator for today, Mr. Wes Moore, who, for those that don't know Wes, you absolutely need to know Wes. Wes is an incredible human and healer for our city and for our nation. He's the CEO of the Robin Hood Foundation. He's written multiple books, including the other Wes Moore. He is someone who has been doing this work for a very long time, but who's also one of the most humble and decent people, and really someone who I'm privileged to call a friend, and who has been a consistent and lifelong champion for Baltimore. So it's my honor to introduce Mr. Wes Moore, who's in the house.
Hey,
Wes is gonna bring on our panel today.
Zeke, this is my honor. Councilman, this is absolutely my honor, man. And let me tell you, you are not just a dear friend, you're a model for me. You're a model for all of us. And we're just so incredibly grateful for your leadership. Dr. Buckley, thank you. And it's good seeing you. It's good seeing you, Coppin strong always.
Always.
Always. And just want to say how much I appreciate just being here. And honestly, just how much I appreciate the leadership and the conversation. I'm the very proud father of James and Mia. I'm the very, very proud husband of Dawn. I'm a Baltimorean, and you cannot talk about who we are as a people, who we are as a city, without understanding that we are great, we are overcomers, we are strong, we are unstoppable, but we have a very real pain that we continue to wrestle with. It's not a pain that we introduced. It's a pain that sits on us. It's not a pain that we created. It's a pain that we were introduced to. That's what is going on. And so the thing about it right now is the fact that we have so many families who are feeling what they are feeling, so many children feeling what they're feeling, that isn't their cross to bear. That's the weight that was placed on them. Now, if the next generation and the generation after that continue to deal with that pain, that will be our cross to bear. That will be on us. And that's why this moment is so important. And that's why, as a Baltimorean, the fact that we are, the first city in America, in this country, to legislate trauma-informed care. The fact that we know that when we see it, we must deal with it. The fact that the amount of ACEs that our children are dealing with. I mean, I only have 2 memories of my father. Second memory I had of my father was when I was about 4 years old and I watched him die in front of me. I watched my mother struggle. I watched my mother become a single mom in a way in her 20s with 3 children she was going to raise on her own. And that was not the life that she had prepared for, the life that she had expected, the life that she dreamed about. I watched the challenges of coming up. And even when we moved with my grandparents who were living up in the Bronx, where my grandfather was a minister in the South Bronx and my grandmother was a school teacher in the South Bronx for 25 years. I watched how the way that poverty and inequality shows itself, it doesn't show itself in one way, it shows itself in every way. It shows itself in every single way that you exist, and it serves as a reminder every single day. And I also, though, saw how we watched extraordinary human beings who stepped up in my life, extraordinary human beings who stepped up in my community, who continued to tell me that I was valuable and worthy, who continued to tell me that I was worth fighting for, and who were willing to wake up every morning and do the work to actually put together the fight. That's what this is about. This is about the fact that the trauma that we are feeling, you did not introduce this. For many of us, you were born into it. For many of us, you see it around you and you're raised in it. But it doesn't have to be this way. And the trauma can be healed. And it can be healed together. And the beauty of this panel and the beauty of being part of this conversation is I think about the people who I want to introduce to join me on this panel, because these are people who are just not only leaders in this space and people whose both personal examples have made a difference in the lives of so many, but also people who are continuing to lead their charge in their own individual way, who continue to reinforce this idea that none of us are being asked to do everything, but every single one of us are being asked to do something. And we have to start with truth, and we have to start with healing. That's our advancement forward. So it is my absolute honor to introduce the panel that I have the joy of moderating. Heroes of mine, fellow Baltimoreans, and folks who I just want to give. I'll give a quick introduction to all these people. The first one, and let me see her. It should come up. It should come up on the screen. Jemira Queen. Hey, Queen, how you doing?
Hello, my name is Jemira Queen. I'm 18 years old and a senior at the Baltimore Polytechnic Institute, and I'm representing the Healing for Alliance and Heart Smiles MD. And it's nice to see you again, Mr. Westmore.
It
I
is.
remember you came onto the success sessions with Heart Smiles one day. So.
Yes, it is so good to see you. But now, don't be. I mean, you're very humble. So let's be clear. You know, I just want all these. Now we're 100 people watching to understand the greatness that is on your screen right now. All right. You are a youth mentor, an advocate, a youth alliance ambassador. You know, you're going to be finishing high school and majoring in social work in the fall. I mean, so let's be clear about the greatness that is on our screen right now. And I just want to say, bless you, bless you, bless you, Queen. And thank you for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. Brother Jones, can we see your face? My God.
Wes, good morning, my friend. Hi, everybody. I'm Joe Jones, repping Baltimore, right? Repping Baltimore, but my role professionally is the founder and CEO of the Center for Urban Families. I'm really glad to be here. And just let me say, the image that I see on the screen reminds me of this most recent inauguration. And Jemira, when I see you, I'm thinking about seeing Amanda Warm, and what we have in front of us is, Wes said, is greatness. And we're so happy, and I'm personally happy to be here, to be by your side, be behind you, and continue to lift up the work that all of us do, but particularly the work that our young people are doing here in the city. Thank you, and good morning, everybody.
Amen. And this brother right here, let me tell you, he has been a personal friend and mentor for more years than I can even count at this point, Joe. I mean, and just a national leader in workforce development, in fatherhood, family services programming. I mean, literally been recognized by everybody from OSI to the White House. I mean, this brother's got pictures with President Obama all over his wall. So Joe, as always, man, you're leading the charge for all of us, and we appreciate you and love you. Can I get Annette is Annette on? There she is.
Hello.
Blessings. Good to see you.
Yes. Hello, Wes. Hello, Joe and Jemira.
Hello.
Thank you. I'm just humbled to be a part of this team and this panel today. I'm president and founder of Roberta's House, which is a family grief support center in Baltimore, and so excited to be a part of this healing city, Baltimore. We've been on this journey for a long time, and it's finally coming to fruition, and the realness that us connecting as a people is essential to the healing of Baltimore. And I just want to thank Council and Zeke Cohen to actually bringing this together and formalizing it. We've got to connect as a people. That's the only way we're going to heal. So I'm excited to be a part of this.
We are blessed to see you. And to be clear, everybody, there is nobody who's put more heart and soul into the work of healing than Annette. I mean, I'm serious. Like, there is no one who was the first to respond to families in need. There's no one who was the first to push on lawmakers and legislators to make sure that we are doing right to deal with unresolved grief and loss in our community. I mean, she's a top 10 CNN hero. And it is so amazingly well deserved. And so God bless you in your work always, and your commitment.
Thank you.
God bless you. And Maya. Is she honest? I see her name.
Well, it says unable to start video. So if somebody can help me with that, that would be great.
Well, we will definitely help to fix that. But I'm telling you, even just hearing your voice gives us a lift.
Okay, good morning. Good morning, Wes.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
It is my honor and privilege to be with every single one of these heroes on the screen today, especially certainly Annette for her pioneering leadership. Joe Jones, everything you do to uplift Black men. Jemira, I am looking forward to hearing your absolute brilliance. And certainly Zeke Cohen and Dr. Buckley. Councilman Cohen, thank you for your leadership on this effort. Dr. Buckley, I was with you all last year at Coppin. It was an excellent rollout. I marched over to the high school. I saw the signing of the bill. I just appreciate your leadership and look forward to everything that we're all going to do together to uplift Baltimore and to address this critical issue of healing in our city.
Yes, yes, and Dr. Rockeymoore Cummings. I mean, someone who is not just understood the personal impact that we need to deal with right now, but also the fact that legislation matters, policy matters, policy matters, policy matters, and you've continued to push it throughout your work. And the people of Baltimore, all of us, have been the beneficiaries. So bless you and thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I am thrilled to jump into this, and first, actually, Jemira, I want to be able to start with you, because you are one of the remarkable young leaders of our city, and so I want to see if you can just set the stage for what we're talking about right now. Talk to us a bit about some of the challenges that you and your peers face and that you see coming up in Baltimore, and then share with us a little bit about your work to heal trauma and what that means as part of this larger youth healing alliance that we're seeing and taking place.
All right, so I'm going to start with like the work my team and I we do. So the Healing Youth Alliance and Heart Smiles MD, we're all centered around like bringing youth to the next level and having conversations about youth with youth at the table. So in the Healing Youth Alliance, we've been for a while now, we've been like able to sit on the sessions with University of Maryland School, the School of Social Work, and also the Black Mental Health Alliance. And from there, we've learned like many different things about mental health, almost like a full course on mental health. And from there, we've been able to like do presentations across the city to let youth know about why their mental health is important, and also let future mental health professionals and also current mental health professionals like learn how they can interact with youth in the city, hearing from youth personally and our personal experience.
I'm sorry. But I want to continue to pick up on that as well, because I think about the work that and you and all the other youth are doing, and it comes from somewhere, right? Every one of us are doing this work because in some way it's our experiences, it's the things that we see, it's the weight that we feel that drives us to our passion, right? It drives us to our work. You don't have to be doing this. For people that are coming to this and trying to understand what brought you to the work, what brought you to the work?
So for me personally, growing up, I've lived in Baltimore City my whole life. I've experienced what it's like living in a household with someone who misuses substances, who is addicted to alcohol. I've lived around drug abuse, violence my whole entire life. I've lived in I went to school in a building where the teachers were not always like the best teachers for the job, or just like in a broken neighborhood in a broken city. And it's just, I never really understood like what really went on and everything. But when I was like younger, around the age of 7, I just like began to like have mentors, and most mentors in my community, and also like mentors in my school, to teach me what it's like, what I can become, and help me understand that the issue is just bigger than me. And once I realized like the issue was bigger than me, I started to research more and just find out what can I do to make the change, and what can I do to be the next person who talks to a young girl like me, around my age about like what is really going on, what is like the bigger issue behind it. For me, like the passion is just stems from just growing up, just watching like my mom struggle, or just watching like myself kind of like go back into a box just because of like the things that I faced on a daily. And I realized that the issue was bigger than me, so I had to do something to just change everything, like everything around me. So
And you are, and we appreciate you for it. Annette, I want to throw this next question to you, because you deal with grief no matter how it shows itself. I mean, because we're talking about whether people have lost someone to homicide, whether they've lost someone to overdose, whether they've lost someone to COVID. You deal with grief. However, families and individuals have to deal with that pain. And I have to tell in full disclosure, I've seen it firsthand in loved ones, in the way that you have supported and helped. What are some of the lessons that you've learned from your work about the idea of dealing with grief, no matter what is the cause or no matter how it shows itself?
One very real lesson that I have learned is that we as African Americans have learned to suppress our grief historically over time as a way of survival, as a way of coping. And this grief has been our detriment and has affected us emotionally, physically, and spiritually in so many ways. And we have a lot of work to do as a community to dispel the misbeliefs about grief being an illness or a sickness or some type of taboo. You know, grief is a human response that is really adjusting and adapting to a loss. And we have to learn how to do this better. We have to learn how to support one another. We have to learn how to validate one another. We have to learn how to have empathy in order to support one another through our trials and tribulations. We have to acknowledge and learn the lessons of our experiences of loss. Loss is a part of life that has been around as long as man has been around. And somehow we have learned to survive. However, the losses have multiplied in such a way and have really devastated. We've seen communities just, become devastated and shattered because of so much grief, not only due to the increase of homicides, but the overdoses, there's increase of suicides, and the pandemic just really, really added to so much of this stress. And what we tend to do when we experience crisis and go through these losses is that we tend to isolate ourselves, which really is the opposite of what we need to do. Connecting with other human beings, supporting one another, and identifying with one another is part of our healing. And it's so essential right now that we find these creative ways, because the pandemic has really just sort of amplified our grief and stress. And so, pivoting to these virtual platforms in order to connect is so important right now, because in order for us to build resilience, we have to connect. That's the greatest lesson that I've learned, that we as a team, Roberta's House, has learned, that if we don't connect, then we can't heal. Because grieving is not meant to be done alone. It's a dangerous, dangerous, dangerous path if we grieve alone. And so, when people are able to connect, they're able to identify, they're able to explore their experiences, they're able to problem solve. It deletes the isolation that we feel when we're going through something so tragic. And to have support through this is essential. And young people grieve too. They have the same fears we have. They have the same anxieties we have as adults. They have the same concerns. And if we as adults don't support our young people, then we're going to continue to see violence. We're going to continue to see self-destructive behavior. We've got to find a way to better support our young people and to recognize that grief is a natural human experience that has to be worked through. We can't get around it. We can't avoid it. It's human, and it's about adjusting and adapting in healthy ways. So these are some of the lessons that this pandemic has taught us, that even more so now we have to find a way to connect as human beings with one another and support each other.
And so quickly, I just want to I want to stay with you for a second, because you're absolutely right about the importance of connecting and feeling that sense of human connection, feeling that sense that you and your existence matters to someone other than you. Our society needs you in that. But also we're in this time when we're being told to socially distance,
Right.
and stay apart and keep ourselves, and the way we keep ourselves safe is to keep ourselves separated. Right. So how in this moment, until we can get past this moment, do we focus on this idea of connection at a time when we also know how important it is that we keep distance?
So, you know, even connecting with the individuals within our family households and having those discussions and conversations. You know, I'm finding myself having more conversations to my young daughter, who's a college student, whose life has been turned upside down. And I'm helping I'm helping her by coaching her through her anxiety, you know, not having a social life anymore, feeling very depressed because her life has changed. You know, as a parent, I have that responsibility, and I'm going through it too in some kind of way, but I've got to make sure that she stays safe. So families first need to be able to support one another inside their household. And secondly, you know, our organization, Roberta's House, has just pivoted to virtually everything, in being able to reach out. Social media right now, you know, of course it can be very dangerous, but there's so many different talk programs. There's so many different self-help programs that are on social media right now that we can reach out and get help about, you know, how to deal with stress, mindfulness activities, having real talk sessions with other groups and programs. And I just encourage any nonprofit, any program that's out there that can adapt to this virtual platform to do it, because that's one way that we can connect to each other. You know, as communities, people now are looking to the computer for their spiritual growth, and, you know, going to church now is all virtual. You know, we've got to find these new ways of connecting in light of this pandemic right now, until we can come back together physically. And we've got to create these tools for our young people to connect. School, you know, we're having a challenge. Roberta's House is having a challenge with the school systems, because we were once in these schools providing grief support. And now that, you know, they have to learn academically virtually as well, they've kind of put this emotional balancing and wellness to the side and said, we've got to first deal with the academics. And, you know, Roberta's House has been put on the sideline in some of the schools, saying, you're not as important right now. We have to deal with these, you know, the academics of these kids. Yes, that is important, but their psychological, emotional wellness right now is most critical, because we've taken away their connectivity to other people. We've taken away this social emotional balance away. So we've got to find a way to talk about how they're feeling, how they're coping with this stress, how they're dealing with the anxiety of being isolated. So yeah, we've got to find these creative ways. And this is awesome. This whole summit healing being done virtually. I'm so glad that, you know, Councilman Zeke, Cohen, and the team and the whole committee decided to move forward with this, because this brings us together to talk about what we're dealing with and how to best cope with it, and policy changes. It's a new way, and we've got to adapt to this new way of communicating.
Yes, thank you so much, Ms. Grier. I like everything you said there. I just wanted to give a youth perspective on that. Personally, I can say that, like, going to school every day, we didn't really have that form of healing. We never really had that, like, the ability to talk about those things at school. But the thing that we did have, we had each other. No matter what we went through, we still went to school every day together, and we had those, like, laughs and jokes. So that is a form of healing. But it's just like nowadays, everything is all virtual, and we never had that beforehand. So it's like kind of even harder to do it now. But the things that I'm doing right now, and the things that we've been doing with Heart Smiles, we have been creating those spaces. We've created that comfort, we've created that comfort where we can have those long conversations. Right. And I feel like when you're living in a household where it's never really talked about at all, it's like, how can you heal? Not everyone has the privilege to have a household where we can talk about those issues, or just even have a household at all. So I feel like it's so important for us to just keep having those conversations and find out what works for you. Everyone is not going to be able to open up the same way. And once it has been normalized for so long to not even talk about those things, it just makes it even harder. So I feel like it's very important for you all to see how you can really relate to youth in this whole entire thing. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes, Queen. Yes,
Mm.
yes. So brother Jones, let me come to you.
Yes, sir.
Over 32,000. That's how many people you have served through the Center of Urban Families. Over 32,000 souls. It is an absolutely remarkable number. And it's not just the number, it's that each and every one of us know the names, know the stories of so many people who you have worked with and have served over these years. As you're talking about it, as you think and reflect back on not just the work that you have done, but also the work that still needs to be done, how do you think about the lessons learned from the tens of thousands of people who you have already worked with and served? And then how do you think about how those lessons learned are gonna reflect into the tens of thousands more who will be touched by the work?
Wow, big questions, Wes. But let me start by paying homage first to my parents, and I do so because I'm a Baltimorean, and I haven't always made the best choices, right? And my mother and father did the very best they could to raise a kid out of the projects in East Baltimore. And when they divorced and separated, with not having the skills to figure out how to manage that separation so the kid wasn't impacted, they just weren't equipped with those tools. But I pay homage to them today. In particular, one, I think about, the work that Dr. Buckley is doing at Coppin. My mom lives at the intersection of North and Warwick and has lived there for 50 years. And last week, my pops died. And because of COVID, it's been difficult to arrange the funeral, but it's set now. His homegoing services will be next Tuesday. So that sits heavy in my heart because it has taken quite a while for us to heal our relationship, that father-son relationship, because of some of the disconnection. And the reason why I mention that, because that is all too prevalent across this country, in Baltimore in particular, where young men, little boys are growing up not knowing who their fathers are. And that lack of identity informs and influences some of their choices and behavior and the social networks they choose to be with, and some of the decisions that lead to us having kids who are able to pick up a gun, pull the trigger seemingly without remorse. And we've got to figure out how we attack some of those things. But the work, and I'm gonna channel my inner Wes Moore here for a second, brother, if you mind. We have to be heart-led and data-informed, right? And I want to ask Ann if she will pick up a slide for, pull up this one slide that I want to use. And I want you to sit with this for a minute. This is child support data, right? This is poverty data, and it's incarceration rate data by some of the zip codes in Baltimore City, right? So if you look at the bottom right, you'll see zip code 21217. That encompasses the Penn North, Sandtown, Winchester area. There are approximately 1,700 individuals, primarily Black men, but there's some women in here who owe an aggregate of $27 million in back state-owed child support. The poverty rate for that community is what you see, and the incarceration rate for that community is what you see. And if you take those, just those zip codes together as an aggregate, you'll see that it represents 8,000 people, largely people of color, who owe over $120 million in state-owed child support. And what that means is that's money that goes back to the state, not to families, right? And so I'll leave that sit there for, maybe Ann, 10 seconds, then you can pull it back down. And so when we think about the folks who we serve at the center, we think about it in terms of what is actually needed to address an issue like this. And this is not the only issue. We look at a set of issues that we call 10 dimensions of self-sufficiency. That's workforce attachment, education, financial capability, transportation, childcare, housing, legal, behavioral health, and then child support. And we look at those as the issues that people largely present with, and how do we develop a game plan around those particular issues, because that's what the data tells us. And that means that people are largely coming with a sense of hopelessness, right? They internalize this trauma as being normal. And so the effort to fight through all of these issues to get to a place where you are socially and economically mobile and you're not toggling back and forth above the poverty line, back and forth. And so our mantra is to dismantle poverty. And you can't do that as one organization or one individual. We have to do the collaboration. And as Annette said, you've got to do the connections. And so for us, it's really thinking about that data, what it tells us, and not just that data. How do we not take it as one homogeneous set of data? How do we disaggregate it to make sure we understand what's happening with people of color relative to a data set? And one example would be when the state first began to present COVID-related infection data for the state. They did not disaggregate it by communities of color. So we were being largely greater impacted than other folks, but the data did not bear it out because we didn't disaggregate, right? And then I think about Maya and the incredible work she does around policy. How do we then extract from that the policy issues that either need to be created or reform that will allow people to become socially and economically able? And the last thing I'll say, and with respect to the question, is there are people who we know have the capability to perform, produce, and succeed in our society. And I'm honored when I have young men and young women who come to the center with that sense of hopelessness. The light is sort of like not flickering in their eyes, but they begin to get that rhythm of what it means to not only transform their lives, but to think about what additional education and training means to be economically mobile, to move up the cheddar line, if you will, over time with a lot of support. And we have to also realize that the amount of support, the length of time that that support is needed can't be tied to a grant from philanthropy that says, in 6 months, we want you to fabricate these microwave success stories when the trauma that has been internalized really depends on a person's individual circumstances, and it will not be ameliorated in a short period of time.
Amen, amen, amen. We are talking about, and it's one of the things, as that we preach on all the time is, you cannot solve, you cannot put $1 million to $1 trillion problem. Can't do it. It doesn't make sense. We have to understand what is the root of what we're talking about and why this thing continues to fester. So, and first, Joe, let me just say, I know I speak on behalf of all of us and all of Baltimore, our deepest condolences to you and the family. And Dr. Rockeymoore Cummings, my Joe teed this up perfectly because you understand the dynamics of dealing with the scale of what we're talking about better than anybody. You are one of the world's experts on health disparities, one of the world's experts when it comes to being able to address these issues within our community. How do you think how this issue of health disparities really shows itself when it comes to addressing trauma? And a secondary question is, it kind of, one thing I'm seeing a thread with what everyone's saying is we also have to focus on helping the helpers, right? There are those who are doing the work every single day, and we act like they are somehow immune to trauma, that they are immune to the weight that sits on their shoulders because they're out there doing, because they're out there doing the good work without understanding that trauma still impacts them too. How do we think about, those things simultaneously, both, the health disparities and what that means in terms of trauma, but also the idea of making sure that we're focusing on helping the helpers?
So thank you, Wes. I'd like to join in your condolences to Joe. And Joe, thank you so much for showing that chart. I've got to tell you that I live smack dab in the middle of 21207. Which is the highest poverty level that you showed on that screen. But let me just back up and say this. In my late husband, Congressman Elijah Cummings' book, he starts with a story about his father's father, how his father always told him the story of how his own father died. He was a preacher in South Carolina, and he fell ill one day in the pulpit. And they carted him back to his house, and they called the doctors, and 2 white doctors showed up at their house. Now, Elijah's father was a small boy at the time, and he was sitting on the porch waiting for the doctors to come out so he could go in and see his father. The doctors didn't notice him when they came out onto the porch, and they started talking about how sick his father was. And the younger white doctor said that if we don't get that man to a hospital soon, he's going to die. And the older white doctor said to the younger white doctor, don't worry about it. He's just a nigga, you know? And Elijah's grandfather died. And Elijah often told me that his father, it haunted his father for the rest of his life. He told that story many times. It haunted Elijah. I heard that story many times. So that means that what we've got is generational trauma. Now we have it operating at the individual level. I can't tell you if I'm in a group of women, how many, the majority, have stories about sexual assault. I can't tell you about how, gun violence has affected particularly young people. When I think about my loss, I lost Elijah, I lost my mother to breast cancer at a young age. When I think about the experiences that I have had with grief in my adult age, but it's happening to children here in Baltimore. They've lost mothers, they've lost fathers, they've lost sisters, they've lost brothers, all in the space, some before they've even reached the age of 12. And all of that grief is compounding in their bodies in ways that are causing them to act out in ways that we as a society are not prepared to handle. We're not prepared to handle it in the schools. We're not prepared to handle it in our communities. Now, I live on a street right down the block. There is a little pocket park. I take my little dog down, we throw balls. And, I see people who are using, substances. One man comes and he just stands there zonked out, and he's leaning to the side, and sometimes he'll sit down, but he's by himself, no headphones, no earphones, no nothing. He's just staring off into space, and he will spend hours down there. And I think about what has happened in his life that has caused him to use escapism and substances to escape the pain. So what do we need to do as a society? We need to actually have comprehensive trauma-informed care. And I'm so proud of Councilman Cohen, certainly the former mayor, Jack Young, for his leadership in this space. All of the practitioners out there, like Annette and Joe and Dr. Buckley, and certainly Westmore, all that you do to fund issues like this, but we need more. And that means that government has to be mobilized at the highest levels. And I've got to tell you that Congress is just now coming to this issue of policy. Our federal government is just now coming to this issue of why we need comprehensive bereavement care. Annette, to your issue, and it's just now being adopted at the federal level with Evermore and other people advocating for this. But also, I would argue that we need funding streams that are government sponsored. And Joe, I say this because you're right. A 12-month grant, a 2-year grant, a 5-year grant is not enough. And certainly the trauma that we experience both at the individual, family, and societal level. And I'm going to end on this, because Black people, as Annette mentioned, have been through so much in this country. Every time we see a video of another Black man primarily shot and killed on the street, it's a triggering event. It's a triggering event that causes some of us emotional pain. It's a triggering event that is compounded upon what we're experiencing in our families and what we've experienced individually. And so we need school-based, comprehensive psychological and social emotional support, and we need community-based. And I think that the only entity that's really prepared to sustain this over years and years and years and over time is government. And so, certainly at the local level, the state level, and at the federal level.
Amen.
Mrs. Cummings, I agree with everything you said. We need more, but we also need understanding in the community. we go through these things on a daily basis. I experience it on a daily basis. Right now, when this meeting ends, I will go back to a household. Well, I'm in a household right now with someone who's addicted to alcohol. I feel like it's been normalized for so long and everything. Everyone's trying to put so much into the community, but we're not really receiving it or internalizing it because we've been around it for so long. It's been normalized and we don't understand what we need to heal from. When you're introduced to trauma for so long and when you're around it, it becomes a normal thing. So you're not really understanding or like having any kind of emotional response to it because it happens so much. It happens on a daily. So it's so hard for anyone to really understand or get or receive help from anyone. And I feel like as helpers, we need to address the issue in a way that helps them understand that the issue is bigger than them. It is bigger than us as a whole, and that we need to help everyone understand, the people of the community understand that what is really happening to us. This is structural racism. This is all types of oppression. And we need to understand that this issue is not because of us, it's because of things that has been set in place beforehand. And I wanted to point out an African proverb that like, it really stands out to me a lot. It says, the child who is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. And I feel like that is so important because when you think of that African proverb, I think of everything that is going on in the community right now. Violence, crime, poverty, everything that is going on right now. We're doing everything in our power to feel some kind of wholeness, some kind of unity, some kind of love. And I feel like that is so important. And the work of healing is so much more important because how can you heal from anything if you don't understand where you're healing from? Because it's been normalized for so long. The reason why that I'm on this meeting right now is because I understand what it's like to heal from those things. I understand the power of healing. And I understand that it's my duty to go back into my community and heal the young Black girls and heal the young Black boys who have experienced everything.
So
wow.
Great.
So on point.
Since you're going to the Super Bowl.
Yes. Hey, because it's funny. That proverb is actually standing right there on my wall. Can you repeat that again, please?
The child who is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth.
Say it a little bit slower. Say it slower for me, please. One more time.
The child who is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth.
Wow.
That is literally sitting right there on my
That's
wall.
one of them drop the mic moments, man.
We'll burn it down to feel its warmth.
If I might add to that.
I'd like to add to it too.
Yeah. In the work that Roberta's house does, we find that training our community is an essential part of healing. Our volunteers, we've trained over 700 volunteers since our existence. And many individuals who come through our grief support programs come back to be trained as a volunteer. And the strength of this, the power of this, is teaching the community how to care for itself, how to provide nurturing environments of empathy and validating and non-judgmental strategies to help people heal within the community. You know, it's greater. We can't just seek therapeutic services from professionals. Yes, that's essential. It's important. It's needed. But we've also have to find a way to nurture within our family homes and our structures. So I agree with you, Jemira. You're so right. You know, most individuals don't even know what trauma means, or don't even recognize that they have experienced traumatic experiences. We had this whole discussion in our office yesterday about domestic violence. Some people think that domestic violence is just between, partners. And it's much broader than that. And until people begin to list out all of their personal experience, they don't even realize that they encountered domestic violence because another family member has beat up another family member within the household that could have been an uncle and a mother. That's domestic violence, but they don't see that as necessarily understanding to be domestic violence. So you're right. We live in this this society and this world with so much trauma and so much hurt and so much suffering that it's become a norm. And we have to educate and show and understand how these are not the norms that we should be living under, and that there's a better way to cope and deal with our stressors and our, and our traumatic experiences that we can heal from. Thank you, Jemira, for that.
Yes.
And I completely agree. And Jemira, my dad, his father was an alcoholic, and he was the town drunk. My dad also often talked about how he had to, after the bars were closed, he had to go up and find his father and then drag him home from whatever bar he was at. And this traumatized my dad, but it then created a dynamic in the family that's similar to what Annette was describing, in terms of, how people who have been traumatized act out in the family unit and create chaos and more trauma on top of trauma. So, I've dealt with the generational effect, and we've had to have an intervention and intercession as a family in my adulthood to deal with something that happened way before I was born. And so with that, when I talk about federal government financing, state government financing, when I talk about local government, I'm not just saying government needs to pass a policy. I say we need resources so that people like Annette and Roberta's house can be fully funded to do the good work in community that is so needed. She's not well resourced enough to do what she needs to do. The nature of the problem is huge. And she needs the resources so that maybe some of those volunteers she's talking about can also get paid for doing that work. Jemira, the work that you do needs to be supported. We need whole, comprehensive, holistic support in schools. I believe in peer-to-peer education and support. And so with that, what I'm saying is that, the resources need to flow so that, the response can be as robust as we need it to be.
Can I add just one quick thing to it, just to complement everything that's been said, and the obligation that we have when we ourselves reach a point where we are quote unquote successful, what it means for us to give back and to care about others to the point where it hurts, right? And I think of everybody on the screen who I know personally, right? And I'm going to point out Wes and Annette and Maya have all sacrificed family, time, and other things to give back. We don't have enough time to tell the stories about what we have done to make cover for our people and our communities. And we've got to make sure that we don't forget, it's not about just being mired in poverty and working your way out. It's once you get out of it, how do you reach back and create the conditions for other people to be successful, to come behind us, and they do the same. That's how we generationally work our way out of this. And more that we can talk about this and our own personal journeys. I just think, I know Wes, I know Annette, and I know Maya, right? We've got to tell those stories.
Absolutely, I agree.
Listen, Councilman, I know you gave me one job, and my job was to get us out on time. I failed in that job, and I'm not sorry. I am not sorry, because I don't get an opportunity to have heroes of mine in one setting like this. So I am sorry, not sorry, for getting us out by 10 a.m. Each and every one of you are jewels. And it serves as a really important reminder to all of us in that, we all are walking through this journey. We're walking through this journey, and in many ways, we feel like we're kind of just walking in a dark room and we're just feeling our way around to try to understand where it is we're going. But one thing I've come to believe and understand is that even when you're in the darkness, it always feels a little easier when you can reach out and hold someone's hand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It always feels a little bit better where even in the scariest moments, if you can touch someone's hand, it feels a little less scary.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we are, right? We know we walk from the blood of truth, and the blood of Parks, and the blood of Shabazz, and the blood of Cummings, and the blood of Marshall, and the blood of Hughes, and the blood of Baldwin, and the blood of Robeson. We know we walk in the blood of Chisholm. We also know that what we are feeling and entrenched in right now was not ours, was not our making. This was a creation that was put on us. But it does become our responsibility to be able to walk collectively to work our way out of it. And I'm so grateful for the work of each and every one of you. I'm so grateful for the work of you, Dr. Buckley, and you, Councilman Cohen. I'm so grateful for everybody who believes and advocates that we need the proper resources to be able to do what it is we need to get done. I believe, and I'm thankful for the fact that we have people who say you cannot put a Band-Aid on a gashing wound. That we need to do right, that we need truth, we need reconciliation, we need reparative healing, and we need to be able to walk through this together. So I am so grateful for this morning. I'm so grateful for each and every one of you. To Annette, to Maya, to Joe, to Queen, each and every one of you, we're all better because of you, and we're eternally grateful. So God bless y'all. God bless all of you, and thank you so much.
God bless you.
Thank you. God bless.
Be more forever.
All right.
Thank you for having me today. Thank you. It was an honor.
Jemira, you got a great journey ahead. Stay
Yes,
on the path.
indeed.
Man,
And we've got an obligation to support you.
That's right.
amen.